Have you ever been mocked by someone you trusted? Someone who should have known better, but instead made you feel invisible? Imagine holding a secret, one that could change everything. A secret that, if revealed, would turn everything upside down. This is the story of betrayal, of rediscovery, and of finding strength in the most unexpected places. It is the story of a woman who has spent her life trying to prove her worth, only to realize that the most important approval she needed was her own. Before we jump back in, tell us where you are tuning in from. And if this story touches your heart, please subscribe, because tomorrow I have saved something truly special just for you. My name is Helen Moore. I am 62 years old. I live in a small, warm house at the edge of town. The garden is full of lavender and rosemary. Every morning, I open the kitchen window and breathe in their soft, calming scent. It reminds me that peace can still exist, even when life feels uncertain. My days are simple, and I like them that way. I wake up early, around 6. I make a cup of tea and sit by the window, listening to the birds. Then I go for a walk through the park nearby. The same people walk there each morning. We smile. We nod. We do not always speak, but their presence is comforting. I used to work as a bookkeeper. Numbers made sense to me. They always followed rules. People do not. After I retired, I tried to find a new rhythm. I joined a knitting group. I took some cooking classes. I even helped at the local library for a while. But nothing felt quite right. So I focused on what always brought me joy: cooking. Cooking is my comfort. It is also my way of showing love. I still make my late husband's favorite stew every Sunday. When I stir the pot, I feel close to him again, just for a moment. That smell, rich with onions and thyme, it makes the house feel full, even when it is only me. I have 2 daughters. Claire, my eldest, lives 3 hours away. She visits when she can, but her life is busy. She is a lawyer with 2 children. Her voice is always rushed, like she is halfway to the next thing. Still, she tries to stay close, and I appreciate that. My younger daughter, Amanda, lives closer, only 20 minutes away. She is married to a man named Kevin. He is charming. In his own way, he owns a restaurant in town, a modern place, with tall glass windows and small plates of food that look like art. He takes pride in what he does, and I respect that. But something in him feels distant, cold, even when he smiles. They come over for dinner sometimes. Kevin always finds a way to talk about his restaurant, about truffle oil, about imported spices, about how food should surprise the tongue. I just nod and listen. I am not trying to impress anyone. I cook from my heart. Last week, I made my chicken pot pie. Amanda used to beg for it as a little girl. She still closed her eyes after the first bite, smiling just like she used to. That made me happy, but Kevin said nothing. He picked at it. He asked if I had ever thought of using smoked sea salt or duck fat pastry. I smiled politely. I told him I used butter. The same butter I have used for 30 years. I did not feel angry, just invisible. That is how I often feel now. Like I am standing behind glass, watching everyone else move forward while I stay still. I am not sad. Not really. Just quiet. Sometimes I wonder if my best moments are behind me. If the most anyone expects from me now is to show up, stay out of the way, and make dessert. But still, I keep baking. I keep inviting them. I keep showing love in the only way I know how. I thought I knew who I was. I thought my life had settled into its final shape. But something was coming, a shift I did not see. Something small, something sharp, and it would change everything. It started with something small. Just a comment. A glance. A silence that felt heavier than usual. That Sunday, I invited Amanda and Kevin for dinner again. I had spent the whole morning preparing roast lamb with rosemary, slow-cooked vegetables, and my special apple crumble. It is not fancy, but it is real. It is honest. That is how I like my food to be. Amanda texted me at the last minute. We're bringing someone from Kevin's restaurant. Just a quick dinner meeting. I smiled at my phone, but I felt something twist inside. Dinner, to me, is a moment for family, for comfort, not for business. Still, I set another plate. They arrived 15 minutes late. Kevin walked in first. He did not even look up when I greeted him. He just handed his coat to Amanda and walked into the dining room. Behind him was a young woman, tall, thin, hair tied back in a perfect ponytail. She was wearing all black, like the servers at his restaurant. "This is Julia," Kevin said, barely looking at me. "She's our new food consultant." Julia gave me a soft, polite smile. "Hello, Mrs. Moore. Your home smells nostalgic." Nostalgic. I did not know whether that was a compliment or a warning. Dinner felt strange. Kevin asked Julia more questions than he asked Amanda. They talked about menu changes, wine pairings, Instagram trends. I tried to join the conversation. I told Julia that I once used rosemary from my garden to make a syrup for lemonade. She blinked. Then she said, "How sweet." I felt like a child, showing a drawing to a busy adult. After dinner, as I cleared the plates, I heard Kevin whisper, "This is why I wanted you to taste it. Her style is very old school." They did not know I heard, but I did. Amanda stayed behind to help me clean. Her voice was soft. She said, "Kevin has just been under pressure. The restaurant is trying to get noticed." I nodded. I said I understood, but I did not. Not really. Something about the evening stayed in my chest like a stone. Later that night I stood by the sink, washing the last plate. My hands moved slowly through the warm water. I stared out the window into the dark. The garden looked still, but something felt off. The rosemary bushes were swaying slightly, though there was no wind. That was how it felt inside me. A quiet stirring. A movement I could not explain. I told myself not to take it personally. But I felt something changing. Something I could not name. Yet it was there. Watching. Waiting. The next few days passed like fog. I tried to carry on with my normal routine. I watered the garden. I went to the market. I even made scones for the neighbors. But something inside me felt different. As if I had stepped into a story where I no longer recognized my role. I could not stop thinking about what Kevin had said. Very old school. He had said it like it was a bad thing, like tradition was something to hide, like the meals I had spent my life perfecting no longer mattered. It hurt more than I expected, and that confused me. Why should I care what my son-in-law thinks? He is just a man who married my daughter. He is not my judge. He is not my teacher. And yet, I did care. I remembered when Amanda first brought him home. He was younger then, full of ideas and confidence. He told me he wanted to open a restaurant that shocked the senses. I had smiled at him and served him my lemon chicken. He had eaten 3 helpings. I thought we respected each other. Now, I was not so sure. I kept replaying that dinner in my mind. The way he barely looked at me. The way Julia examined every bite like a critic. The way Amanda kept glancing between them, as if trying to keep peace without saying a word. And the worst part was this. I did not know where I stood anymore. I thought I was the heart of this family, the one who brought everyone together. But now I felt like a background character in their lives, present, but silent. Always preparing the meal, never invited to sit at the real table. I tried to talk to Amanda. I called her the next morning and asked if she had time for lunch. She paused before answering. I can stop by for 20 minutes. Is everything all right? I told her it was, but it was not. When she arrived, I had made grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup. It was what she used to ask for on rainy days when she was little. She smiled, politely, but barely touched it. She looked tired. Her eyes kept flicking to her phone. I asked gently, "Amanda, is Kevin unhappy with me?" She looked up, surprised. "What? No, of course not. But at dinner," I said, "he seemed disappointed." She gave a soft laugh. "Oh, Mom, he is just under pressure. Julia is pushing for changes and he is trying to impress new investors." "New investors?" I asked. She nodded. "Yes. Someone silent but generous. The kind who can help us open a second location if things go well." I froze for a second. Amanda did not notice. She kept talking, but her words began to blur. Someone silent. Someone generous. I thought of something I had done 6 months ago. Something I had kept secret. Something I had done out of love. And now, I wondered if it had been a mistake. I smiled at Amanda and told her not to worry. But inside, my thoughts were no longer calm. I was confused. About Kevin. About my place in this family. And now, about a truth I had buried. One that might rise. Too soon. The next week, Kevin called me. That, in itself, was unusual. He rarely contacted me directly. Usually, it was Amanda who passed along messages about dinner plans, birthdays, or help with the children. But this time, it was his name on the screen. I stood in my kitchen, drying dishes, when the phone rang. I hesitated before picking it up. "Hello?" I said, cautious. "Hi, Helen," Kevin said, in a voice that tried to sound cheerful. "I was wondering if you might have time to meet for coffee sometime this week, just the 2 of us." I paused. "Of course," I said slowly. "Is everything all right?" Yes, he said quickly. "Everything is fine. I wanted to talk to you about something. Nothing bad. Just something on my mind." That was all he gave me. We arranged to meet on Thursday morning at a small cafe near his restaurant. The place had polished wooden tables and soft jazz playing in the background. Kevin was already there when I arrived. He stood to greet me and even pulled out my chair. It was almost too polite. "Thank you for coming," he said. "Of course," I replied. "You said you had something to talk about?" He looked down at his coffee. He stirred it slowly, although it was already half gone. Then he cleared his throat. I know things have been a little tense lately. I just wanted to say I appreciate everything you have done for Amanda and me. Truly. That caught me off guard. I waited for the rest. He leaned forward slightly. You are kind, and you have always been there for us. I know I do not say it enough. I wanted to believe him. I truly did. But something about his tone felt rehearsed, like he was reading from a script he had memorized. Kevin, I said gently, is there something specific you are trying to say? He hesitated. Then he smiled. A wide, easy smile that showed no teeth. You are a great cook, Helen. Your food reminds me of home, of comfort. It is not my style, of course, but it has heart. I respect that. I felt both warm and cold at the same time. I appreciate that, I said carefully. Though it did not feel that way last Sunday. His smile faded just slightly. Ah, yes, that was not my finest moment. Julia was judging everything. She is intense, you know. I was trying to impress her, and I may have said things I did not mean. I looked at him closely. His face was calm, his eyes focused, but distant. He was trying hard, too hard, to sound sincere. Still, I nodded. Thank you for saying that. Then, suddenly, he changed the subject. So listen, he said, leaning closer. I have been thinking about hosting a special event at the restaurant. Something different. A family-style evening. You know, something nostalgic, warm, like Sunday dinner at your grandmother's house. I blinked. That sounds nice. I said slowly. I would love for you to help me with it, he continued. I mean, your recipes, your touch. You could even introduce the dishes. People love that. Storytelling with food. Very trendy. It should have made me happy, but instead I felt uneasy. Are you asking me to work for you? I asked. He laughed. Oh, no. Nothing official. Just a fun collaboration. Something the press might notice. Local chef celebrates tradition with family matriarch. That sort of thing. There it was. He wanted my story, my warmth, my image. But not me. Not really. Still, I smiled. I will think about it, I said. He looked pleased. Great. I knew you would be open to it. We said goodbye politely. He even hugged me, though. It felt more like a performance than a true gesture. When I walked home, my thoughts were heavy. I wanted to trust him. I wanted to believe his words were real. That maybe he was trying to build a bridge between us. That perhaps this was a chance to feel included again. To be seen. But I also heard the way he had said it. Something the press might notice. It was not about family. It was about image. Still, I told myself to give him a chance. Maybe he was trying in his own way. I stood in my kitchen that afternoon, stirring a pot of soup, and thought about the years I had spent cooking for others. Feeding people is a sacred thing. It is not just about the food. It is about love, memory, care. I wondered if Kevin understood that. I wondered if he even saw me as a person, or just a symbol. I wanted to trust him, but something in me had already begun to hesitate. The following Sunday, I went to church alone. Amanda usually joined me. At least, she used to. But lately, she had been too busy. With the children, with the restaurant, with everything else. I sat in the fourth pew, the one near the window, where the sunlight gently touched the wood. The air smelled faintly of old books and lilies. As the choir sang, I felt a quiet ache in my chest. After the service, I stepped outside and almost walked past her. "Mrs. Lewis?" A voice called behind me. I turned and saw her, Evelyn Harding. Evelyn had lived 2 doors down from me for over 15 years. She was sharp, kind, and known in the neighborhood for saying things others were too polite to say. She approached with a half smile. "I almost did not recognize you. You look tired." I gave a polite laugh. "That obvious?" She touched my arm gently. "We have not spoken in some time. But I heard something. About Kevin. I was not sure if I should mention it, but I think you deserve to know." I froze. "What do you mean?" She looked around, then lowered her voice. "A friend of mine does the books for one of Kevin's suppliers. She mentioned his name the other day. Said he has been spending money. Fast. Very fast. More than the restaurant brings in. She said it was odd." I blinked. "That cannot be true." Evelyn nodded. "I thought the same. But she showed me the numbers. There are quiet loans, big ones, and names she did not recognize. She thought maybe someone is covering him." A coldness spread in my chest. I thought of the silent investor Amanda had mentioned, the generous backer Kevin had spoken about with so much confidence, the one he refused to name. My heart began to race. I wanted to ask Evelyn more, but she was already stepping back. "I should not have said anything," she whispered. "Just be careful, Helen." She gave my hand a gentle squeeze and walked away. I stood there for a long time. The sky above was bright and cloudless, but I felt as though a shadow had crept over me. Was this what Kevin had not told Amanda? Was this why he had been so kind to me at the cafe? I walked home slowly. My legs felt heavy, my thoughts heavier. In the kitchen, I boiled water for tea, but forgot to pour it. Instead, I opened the drawer beside the fridge, the one I kept locked. Inside, it was a folder. Pale blue. Plain. Inside that folder were the bank transfer papers, the ones I had signed 6 months ago, the ones that made me the silent investor. I remembered the day clearly. Kevin had come to me in private. He had been charming, respectful, even humble. He said the restaurant had a chance to expand, to do something amazing, but he needed one more push. He had looked me in the eye and said, "I would never ask Amanda. I would never burden her. But you understand what it means to build something. You have built a family. You know how rare it is to find the right time, the right space. I promise, I will pay you back in full, with interest." I had believed him. At the time, it felt like I was helping both of them. A quiet gift, one that Amanda never needed to know about, one that came from love. But now I felt like I had been used. That night, I could not sleep. I lay in bed with the window open, listening to the wind rustle the leaves. My thoughts kept returning to Evelyn's words. "Be careful, Helen." I kept wondering if I had made a terrible mistake. If my silent help had become something else, something darker. The next morning, I tried to shake the feeling. I told myself it was gossip, that Evelyn had misunderstood, that Kevin had everything under control, but the doubt had already planted itself deep inside me. I went to the grocery store to clear my mind. While I was choosing apples, I heard 2 women whispering behind me. "Did you hear about that restaurant on 4th? "Which one?" "The one with the trendy menus. I heard they fired the pastry chef." Something about budget cuts. My hand paused above the apples. I walked away quietly, heart pounding. On the way home, I passed the restaurant. The lights were off. The windows were clean, but the tables were bare. A chalkboard sign outside said, "Closed for private event. Reopening soon." It was only Monday. Something was wrong. That evening, Amanda came by with the children. They ran inside, cheerful and loud, but I could see the tension in her face. "Do you want some tea?" I asked her. She sat down and nodded, brushing hair from her forehead. "It has been a long week." I poured the tea slowly. "Amanda, is Kevin all right?" She looked up, startled. "Why?" I worry," I said gently. "He has a lot on his plate." She sighed. "He says everything is fine. But I know him. He is hiding something." I looked at her closely. "Do you trust him?" She did not answer right away. Finally, she whispered, "I want to." And there it was. The same sentence. I had said to myself, I want to trust him, but sometimes wanting is not enough. I told myself to breathe. For the next few days, I tried to carry on, as if nothing had changed. I cooked, I cleaned, I went for walks. I even smiled at neighbors and waved at the children playing in the street. On the outside, I looked calm, but inside, something was shifting. I could not forget Evelyn's warning. Her voice stayed with me like a whisper in the back of my mind. I tried to shake it off. I told myself that she was just being dramatic, that her friend must have been mistaken, that Kevin would never lie to Amanda, or to me. But I also remembered the folder, the bank transfer, the exact amount I had given him, and how carefully he had made me promise to keep it a secret. "It is just business," he had said. "Nothing Amanda needs to worry about. I want this to be between us, quiet, respectful." At the time, I thought it was kindness. Now, I was not sure what it was. Still, I said nothing. Not to Amanda, not to anyone. I convinced myself that I was overthinking, that I had always been a worrier, that maybe I was just feeling a little left out, a little old, a little forgotten, and maybe my emotions were clouding my judgment. So I went to the restaurant that Friday evening, just like Kevin had invited me. He called it a soft-tasting night, a preview for his upcoming family-style event. The lights were low, candles on every table, soft music playing. Amanda was there, greeting guests. Kevin stood by the kitchen, looking proud and relaxed. When he saw me, he smiled wide. "There she is," he said, "our star of the evening." He kissed me on the cheek and handed me a glass of sparkling water. "Come on, you are going to love this." I walked in slowly. The place looked beautiful. The menu had my meatloaf, my green beans with almonds, my cornbread, my apple crisp, but none of it had my name on it. Instead, the little printed card on each table said, "Inspired by home, curated by Chef Kevin." Not inspired by Helen, not family recipes passed down. Just home, a word without a face. I sat at the corner table and watched people eat. They were smiling. They were enjoying it. The food tasted the same, but it felt different. Like someone had taken something sacred and made it shiny. Like they had dressed my memories in borrowed clothes. Halfway through the evening, Kevin stood to give a little speech. "I want to thank you all for coming," he said. "Tonight's menu is a celebration of tradition. The kind of food that reminds us where we come from. It is about family. It is about roots." He glanced in my direction but did not say my name. Not once. Amanda was clapping. Everyone was clapping. And I was sitting there, smiling politely, feeling like a stranger, at my own table. After the event, Kevin came over. "Was it what you imagined?" he asked. I nodded. "It was lovely." He leaned in. "You are amazing, Helen. I mean it. I could not have done this without your influence. Not your help, not your recipes, just influence." It was such a careful word, like he had practiced saying it in the mirror. He handed me a small envelope. "A little thank you," he said. I took it. I did not open it right away. Later that night, in my bedroom, I sat on the edge of the bed and finally looked inside. It was a $50 gift card to a local spa. No note, no mention of the tens of thousands I had invested. Just a small scented card. Placed it on the nightstand and stared at it for a long time. I wanted to cry, but I did not. Instead, I stood, changed into my robe, and walked to the kitchen. I made a cup of chamomile tea and sat in silence. The silence felt heavier than usual. Sipped slowly and told myself, this is not a big deal. Maybe he just forgot. Maybe he meant to say my name. Maybe he will mention it next time. I told myself that I was being sensitive, that people forget things, that men like Kevin are just busy, distracted, that it was not personal. But it was personal. It was my food, my name, my money, my silence. I closed my eyes and breathed deeply. I tried to ignore the tight feeling in my chest. I told myself to be patient, to wait, to trust that the truth always comes out. But in that quiet kitchen, with the spa card lying beside my tea, I felt something I did not want to feel. I felt small, and that was when I realized something had changed. Not in Kevin, in me. I was starting to see the truth, but I still was not ready to face it. So I told myself again, it is probably nothing, and I turned out the light. The next few days were filled with small, uncomfortable moments. Kevin's visits to my house became less frequent. When he did come, it was always in a rush. He would drop by for a quick coffee or to check in on Amanda. But there was always something on his mind. His eyes never seemed to meet mine as they used to. And when they did, it was different. There was a distance, a shift that I could not explain. At first, I convinced myself it was just the stress of the restaurant, the busy season. But I started to notice the little things. The way he would greet Amanda with a hug and a kiss, but I would only get a quick handshake or a nod. The way he would laugh a little too loudly at something Amanda said, but when I made a joke, it would fall flat. The way he looked at me. It was like he was studying me, not as if I were family, not as if I were someone he respected, but as if I were a stranger, someone he could not quite figure out, someone who had become part of the background. And it hurt. I tried to ignore it. I tried to convince myself it was just a phase. Maybe he was tired. Maybe the pressures of the business were getting to him. But every time he looked at me, I felt that unfamiliar gaze, cold, calculating, distant. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself I was overthinking. But deep inside, I knew something was wrong. One evening, Amanda asked me to come over to the restaurant for a family night. She said Kevin wanted to make it special, a chance for all of us to spend time together. I agreed, though I was reluctant. I was tired. I had a sense of unease that I could not shake. But I smiled and told her I would be there. When I arrived, the restaurant was quiet, save for a few staff members cleaning up. Kevin was at the bar, wiping down glasses. When he saw me, he smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. "Glad you could make it," he said, his tone polite but distant. "Of course," I replied, trying to sound cheerful. I sat down at the bar across from him, and we made small talk for a while. Amanda was in the back, organizing some paperwork. The kids were upstairs with the babysitter. It was just Kevin and me, and the tension in the room was palpable. At one point, he looked up from his work and caught my eye. For a brief moment, our gazes locked. And then I saw it. There was something in his eyes, something cold, something calculating. It was as if he was measuring me, deciding whether I was worth his time, whether I had a place in his world. I felt exposed. I wanted to look away. I wanted to pretend nothing was wrong. But I could not. I held his gaze, refusing to be the one to break it. I wanted to know what he was thinking, why he was acting this way, why I felt like I had suddenly become invisible in my own family. But, instead of speaking, he simply looked at me, and the moment stretched on, heavy and uncomfortable. Finally, he turned away, as if the look had meant nothing, as if it was just a passing thought. But I knew it meant something. I knew it had been deliberate. The truth was, I no longer recognized him. Not the Kevin who had once been so warm and open. The one who had called me family in every way that mattered. Not the Kevin who had looked at me with respect, with admiration. This Kevin was different. This Kevin was a stranger. I could not shake the feeling that the man sitting across from me was only pretending to be the person I had once known. That everything he had said and done had been a facade, a carefully constructed lie. After a few moments, I excused myself and went to the restroom, hoping that the quiet would give me a chance to collect my thoughts. I leaned against the sink, staring at my reflection in the mirror. I did not recognize the woman staring back at me. Who had I become? Why had I allowed myself to ignore the signs? I had been so eager to please, so desperate to feel included, to feel useful. I had given him my trust, my silence, my money. And for what? To become a pawn in his game? I had spent so many years taking care of everyone else, making sure Amanda had what she needed, making sure the family was happy. I had always put others first, never once considering that I, too, had a right to be seen, a right to be respected, a right to be heard. I felt a fire ignite in my chest. No more. I was tired of being invisible. I was tired of being the one who was always there, always giving, always silent. I walked back into the dining area with a new sense of purpose. Kevin was still at the bar, his back to me now. I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he clenched his jaw. I did not know what had happened. I did not know what had changed between us. But I knew one thing for certain. I was not going to let him continue pretending. When I walked past him, I stopped and placed my hand on his shoulder. He stiffened at the touch, but did not turn around. "Kevin," I said, my voice steady, "I need to talk to you." For the first time in a long while, he did not brush me off. He turned to face me, and his expression softened, but only for a moment. Then it was replaced by the same guarded look. "What is it, Helen?" I took a deep breath, searching for the right words. I did not want to accuse him. I did not want to start a fight. But I could not stay silent any longer. "I do not know what has happened between us," I said quietly. "But I cannot keep pretending like everything is fine. I deserve more than this." He frowned but did not respond. "I have been invisible for too long," I continued. "I gave you everything. I trusted you. And now, I need you to trust me." Kevin's expression hardened. "What are you trying to say?" "I am saying that I want the truth. All of it." For a moment he said nothing. Then with a sigh, he looked away. "I am doing the best I can, Helen," he muttered. But the way he looked at me, it was like I was the problem, like I was the one who had made things difficult. I stood there, feeling the weight of everything I had ignored for so long, and for the first time, I realized that I had to face it. Whatever had changed between us, I could not pretend it was not there any longer. I had never been one to confront people directly. It was never my style. I preferred to quietly observe, to listen, to wait for the right moment. I thought that if I was patient enough, if I gave it time, everything would work itself out. But as I stood in front of Kevin, feeling the weight of everything I had been ignoring, I realized that I could not keep waiting. It was time to ask him the truth. I watched him closely. His eyes darted away, avoiding mine. There was something about his body language that screamed discomfort. His fingers drummed lightly on the edge of the bar, a nervous habit I had seen many times before. But this time, it felt different. This time, I knew he was hiding something. I took a step closer, not out of anger, but out of necessity. "Kevin," I said, my voice steady, though my heart was pounding in my chest. "I need to know what is going on. Why are you avoiding me?" His face tightened, but he did not look at me. He remained focused on the counter in front of him. "You are imagining things, Helen," he said, his voice lacking its usual warmth. "Nothing is going on." I shook my head, feeling the frustration rise within me. "No, Kevin, I am not imagining things. Something has changed between us. I can feel it, and I cannot keep pretending that I do not notice." He sighed, running, a hand through his hair, his eyes finally meeting mine. There was a flicker of something, guilt maybe, but it was gone as quickly as it came. "Look," he said, his tone softer now but still guarded. "It is just the restaurant, the business. It has been a lot lately. I have had to make some tough decisions. That is all." I watched him closely, searching his face for any sign of the truth. But there was nothing. Just the same mask he had been wearing for weeks. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "Kevin, I know about the money, I know about the investment, and I want to understand why you never told me." His expression shifted. For a moment he looked taken aback, as if he had not expected me to know. "You know?" he asked, his voice low. "How?" "I found the bank statement," I said quietly. "I know what you took. I know how much it was." His face hardened at my words. "I did not want you to worry," he muttered, avoiding my gaze again. "It was an investment, Helen. I thought you would understand." "Understand?" I repeated, my voice rising despite myself. "You took my money without telling me. You made a decision for me without even asking. How can you expect me to understand that?" I felt the anger bubbling up, but I held it in. This was not about anger. This was about the truth. "Kevin, I trusted you," I continued, my voice shaking slightly. "I trusted you like family. I never questioned you, but you took advantage of that trust." He winced at the word advantage, but did not say anything. "Why did you lie to me?" I asked, my throat tightening. "Why didn't you just tell me the truth?" There was a long silence. He stared at the counter in front of him, his jaw clenched tightly. I could see that he was struggling with something, but he was not ready to face it. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he spoke. "I did not want you to feel rejected," he said, his voice quieter now. "I knew how much you cared about the restaurant, how much you wanted to be involved, but I thought it would be easier if I just handled it myself. I thought you would be proud of me for doing this on my own." I shook my head, tears welling up in my eyes. "It was never about you doing it on your own, Kevin. It was about respect. You took something that belonged to me and made it into your secret. And now, you are asking me to just pretend everything is fine?" He looked up at me, finally meeting my eyes with something that resembled regret. "I did not mean to hurt you, Helen. I swear I didn't." The sincerity in his voice made me hesitate. For a moment I almost believed him. But then I remembered the way he had treated me lately. The way he had kept me at arm's length, the way he had looked at me like I was someone he barely knew. "No, Kevin," I said, my voice firm. "It is not just about the money. It is about everything. It is about how you have changed toward me, and I cannot ignore that any longer." He opened his mouth to speak, but I held up my hand. "I have given you so much, Kevin," I continued. "I have trusted you. I have invested in your dreams. And now I am asking you for the truth. I need to know what is really going on. I need to know if this is something we can fix, or if it is too far gone." He was silent for a long time, his face a mixture of frustration and guilt. "I did not mean for it to get like this," he finally said, his voice soft. "I thought I could control everything. I thought I could fix it all without anyone getting hurt." "But you hurt me," I whispered, my voice barely audible. His eyes softened, and for a brief moment I saw the man I once trusted. The man who had stood by me and Amanda all those years ago. "I am sorry," he said quietly, his voice breaking. "I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted to lose your trust." I nodded, my heart heavy with the weight of his words. But I knew one thing for sure now. I could not keep living in the shadows of his lies. I could not keep pretending that everything was fine when it was not. I had asked for the truth, and now that I had it, I had to decide what to do next. The silence between Kevin and me stretched on for what felt like hours. After our conversation, I returned home that night, my mind spinning. The words we had exchanged replayed in my head over and over. His apology, his explanation, and the regret. In his eyes, they lingered, but they did not heal the wound. It was not just the money. It was not just the lies or the secrets. It was everything. The way he had treated me, the way he had kept me at a distance, the way he had taken advantage of my trust. It all swirled together, a storm in my chest. I sat in the kitchen, the empty cup of tea growing cold in front of me. It had been hours since I had come home, but the house still felt silent. The stillness pressed down on me. The ticking of the clock on the wall was the only sound. I could not stop thinking. I thought about Amanda. She was my daughter, my heart. I loved her fiercely, but now I could not help but wonder how much she knew. Had she been aware of the way Kevin had treated me? Did she know what he had done with the money? Was she as blind to it all as I had been? I had always prided myself on being a mother who could see through things. I had always believed that I knew my daughter better than anyone else, that I could protect her from the world's sharp edges. But now, I was left questioning everything. Had I failed her? Had I failed myself? The thoughts were suffocating. I found myself pacing around the kitchen, the quiet of the house mocking me with its emptiness. I wanted to scream, to release the weight in my chest, but I could not. I could not make sense of it. I could not make sense of what Kevin had done, of the way he had changed, of the way he had made me feel like I was invisible. It was as if I had spent so many years building this relationship, this bond with him, only for it to crumble under the weight of his secrets. The hardest part was that I did not know what to do now. I could not go back to pretending that everything was fine. I could not just sweep it all under the rug, as I had done for so many years. I had always been the strong one, the one who held things together, who fixed problems before they got too big. But now, I felt powerless. I was tired of being the one who picked up the pieces, tired of being the one who forgave and forgave, only to be left with nothing but the remnants of my own heart. I needed to talk to Amanda. I needed to understand what was happening, to know if she knew more than she was letting on. But a part of me was afraid. Afraid that if I confronted her, I would lose her too. I had already lost Kevin. Had I already lost her as well? I thought back to the days when Amanda was a child, when she would run to me for comfort, when she would look up at me with those innocent eyes and trust me with everything. I thought about the times when we would sit together, just the two of us, and talk about our dreams. It seemed like a lifetime ago, when things were simple. But now, nothing felt simple. The dreams we had shared felt so far away, like they belonged to someone else. I walked into the living room, looking out the window, at the darkened street. The glow of the street lamps painted the world in shades of gold and silver. It was peaceful, but there was a deep sadness in the stillness. I had been so focused on everyone else, on Kevin, on the family, on the business, that I had forgotten to take care of myself. I had let everyone else's needs come before my own, until I had become a shadow of who I used to be. A woman who only existed to make things work, to make others happy. But now I was forced to confront myself. I could no longer ignore the pain I felt, the hurt that Kevin had caused, the confusion I had carried for so long. And as much as I wanted to hold on to the past, to keep things as they were, I knew that I could not. I had to face the truth, even if it meant losing something precious. I was still standing in the living room when Amanda came home. I heard the door open, heard her voice in the hallway. She was laughing with the kids, her usual energy filling the space, but it did nothing. To calm the storm inside me, I knew I had to speak to her. I knew I had to ask her what was really going on, but the fear gripped me again. What if she was just as blindsided as I had been? What if she had no idea what Kevin had done? What if, in trying to protect her, I ended up pushing her away? I could feel my heart racing as I heard her footsteps approach. She appeared in the doorway, her face lighting up when she saw me. "Hi, Mom. You're still up? I thought you were getting an early night." I forced a smile, but it felt strained. I could not sleep. There is a lot on my mind. Her expression softened as she walked into the room. "Is everything okay? You look like you have a lot on your mind." I hesitated, my mind swirling with 1,000 questions. How could I ask her what I needed to know without accusing her, without making her feel like she had to choose sides? I stood up slowly, gathering my courage. "Amanda, we need to talk." She looked at me, her brow furrowing. "About what?" "About Kevin," I said quietly. "About what's been going on. About the things I've discovered." Her face instantly changed. The energy that had filled the room seemed to drain away, and I could see the uncertainty in her eyes. "I don't know what you mean," she said softly, her voice betraying the tension that had suddenly gripped her. "I need to understand." "Amanda," I said gently, "I need to know if you knew about the money, if you knew what Kevin was doing." She opened her mouth, but no words came out. She hesitated, then took a deep breath. "I didn't know everything," she said, her voice shaking. "I knew he was under pressure, but I didn't know he was hiding it from you." Her words hit me like a wave. I felt a mixture of relief and heartache. She had been kept in the dark, just like me, but it did not make the situation any easier. We both stood there, the weight of the truth settling over us. And for the first time, I realized that we were both just victims in a situation we had not been prepared for. I sat on the couch, the air between Amanda and me thick with unspoken words. Her revelation had not given me the clarity I had hoped for. In fact, it had only deepened the ache in my chest. I had always prided myself on being the strong one, the one who could weather any storm, who could keep everything together even when everything felt like it was falling apart. But tonight, I felt as though the ground beneath me had shifted, leaving me struggling to find my balance. Amanda sat next to me, her hands folded in her lap, her gaze fixed on the floor. We had talked, but it felt like we had not said anything, at all. The silence was louder than any conversation could have been. I had wanted answers. I had wanted to know if she knew about Kevin's secrets. But now that I had the truth, I wasn't sure if I could handle it. "I never wanted to hurt you, Mom." Amanda's voice broke the silence. She turned to look at me, her eyes filled with an intensity I had never seen before. "I never wanted you to feel like you were being kept in the dark. I didn't know how to tell you everything. I didn't know what to say." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. She had been trying to protect me, just like Kevin had tried to protect me. But their attempts to shield me had only made everything worse. I had spent so many years trying to be the protector, the one who kept everyone safe, the one who made sure everything was okay. But now I saw the cost of that. My attempts to protect had isolated me. They had created a wall between me and the people I loved the most. I closed my eyes, trying to push back the tears. The pain was quiet, but it was relentless. It wasn't loud like an argument or a fight. It wasn't explosive. It was the kind of pain that sat with you in the stillness, the kind that grew in the silence when you were alone with your thoughts. "You don't need to protect me, Amanda," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I just want the truth. I want to know what is really going on." She nodded, her expression a mixture of guilt and regret. "I should have told you sooner. I should have trusted you more. I didn't realize how much you were hurting until now." I could feel the weight of her words pressing down on me. I had always thought that Amanda and I were on the same page, that we had a connection no one could break. But now I was faced with the truth. We had both been keeping secrets from each other. I had been keeping my pain hidden, and she had been keeping her confusion to herself. "I don't know what to do, Mom," she said softly, her voice filled with uncertainty. "I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to make everything right." I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I had always been the one to offer solutions, to fix things when they went wrong. But now, I realized that there was no quick fix for this. There was no easy way out of the hurt that had built up between us. "You don't have to fix anything, Amanda," I said quietly. "You don't have to carry all of this on your own. I just need you to be honest with me. I just need you to be real." There was a pause, and then she reached over and took my hand. It was a simple gesture, but it meant more to me than words could say. "I'm sorry, Mom," she whispered. "I'm sorry for not being there when you needed me. I never meant to make you feel alone." I squeezed her hand, feeling the warmth of her touch. The pain was still there, still heavy in my chest, but for the first time in a long while, I felt a small flicker of hope. Maybe we could rebuild what had been broken. Maybe we could learn to trust each other again. But the road ahead would not be easy. There was a lot of hurt to work through, a lot of old wounds to heal. And it would take time. Time and patience and understanding. For now, though, all I could do was sit in the quiet, the soft sound of Amanda's breathing the only thing I could focus on. I had no answers, no solutions, only the knowledge that we were both in this together, and that for the first time in a long time, felt like enough. I closed my eyes again, letting the silence wrap around me. There would be a time for healing, but that time was not now. Now, it was simply about being here, in this moment, with my daughter. That was all I could give, and maybe that was enough. The silence between Amanda and me had lasted longer than I had expected. I could feel the weight of her guilt hanging in the air, thick and suffocating. It was a silence that spoke louder than any words could. We had both tried to avoid the truth for so long, but now it was right in front of us, unavoidable and raw. I had listened to her apologies, her explanations, but I still felt like something was missing. There was a piece of the puzzle that I had not yet found. I needed to understand, to know exactly what had happened, and why it had taken so long for me to see the truth. I sat across from her, my hands trembling slightly in my lap. My heart was heavy with the weight of unanswered questions, and I could not keep pretending that everything was okay. "Amanda," I said, my voice steady but filled with a quiet intensity, I need to know more. I need you to tell me everything. I need the truth, the whole truth, not just pieces of it." Her eyes widened, and for a moment I thought she might pull back, that she might retreat into the walls she had built around herself. But instead, she sat up straighter, her expression softening, though I could see the struggle in her eyes. "I know you want answers, Mom," she said, her voice a little shaky, "and I want to give them to you. But it's hard. It's hard to know where to start. There's so much I don't know myself." I leaned forward slightly, my gaze never leaving hers. "You can start with Kevin. Tell me what happened. Tell me why you didn't tell me sooner. I deserve to know." She looked away for a moment, her fingers fidgeting nervously with the hem of her sleeve. I could see the inner conflict playing out on her face. I knew this wasn't easy for her, but I also knew that I could not move forward without the answers I needed. "Kevin," she began, her voice quiet. "I don't know exactly how to explain it. I think he was just overwhelmed. The restaurant, the money problems, everything was piling up, and I could see him struggling. But I didn't realize how deep it went. I didn't see how far he was willing to go to cover up his mistakes." My mind raced as she spoke. I had always trusted Kevin. He had been a part of our family for years, and in some ways, I had always seen him as the son I never had. But now, with every word Amanda spoke, the image of him that I had clung to was shattering. "So, you knew he was hiding things from me?" I asked, my voice trembling with a mixture of hurt and disbelief. "I knew something was off," Amanda admitted, her gaze dropping to the floor. "I just didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to face it. And I didn't want you to have to deal with it either. You've already been through so much, Mom. I thought if I could just protect you from it, it would all go away." Her words cut through me like a knife. She had been trying to protect me, but in doing so, she had only kept me in the dark. She had believed that shielding me from the truth would save me from the pain. But now I realized how much pain that had caused. "How long has this been going on?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "A few months," she replied, her voice small. "Maybe longer." I didn't know the full extent of it until recently. I didn't know that Kevin had been borrowing money from friends, from the bank, from anyone he could. I didn't know he was using our personal accounts to cover up his mistakes. And I didn't know he was keeping all of this from you. I felt my chest tighten as the weight of her words settled over me. My own son-in-law had been betraying me, lying to me, all while I had been blind to it. How could I have missed it? How could I have been so foolish? "I trusted him," I said, more to myself than to Amanda. "I trusted him with everything, with my family, with my business, with you. And he lied." Amanda reached out, placing her hand over mine. "I know, Mom, I know. And I'm sorry. I wish I had known how bad it was. I wish I had told you sooner, but I didn't know how." I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to hold back the tears that were threatening to fall. I had been through so much in my life, so many difficult moments. But this betrayal felt different. This wasn't just about the money. It was about trust. It was about the people I had let into my life, the people I had opened up to, only to find that they had been hiding their true selves from me. I took a deep breath and opened my eyes, meeting Amanda's gaze. "What do we do now? How do we fix this?" Amanda bit her lip, her brow furrowed in thought. I don't know, Mom. I don't know if we can fix it. Kevin's been hiding things for so long, and I don't know if he's ready to admit everything. But we can start by talking, by being honest with each other, and we can take it one step at a time. Her words gave me little comfort. The road ahead seemed long and uncertain, filled with more questions than answers. But one thing was clear. I could no longer live in the shadow of these secrets. I had to know the truth, no matter how painful it was. I want to talk to Kevin, I said quietly. I want to hear the truth from him. I need to know where I stand. Amanda nodded, her eyes filled with empathy. I understand. I'll be here with you, Mom. Whatever you decide to do, I'll support you. I squeezed her hand, grateful for her presence, but deep down, I knew that this journey would be mine to take. The questions that haunted me could only be answered by Kevin, and until I had those answers, I would not be able to move forward. I stood up slowly, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on me. The time had come to face Kevin, to demand the truth. And I would do it, no matter the cost. The morning after our conversation, I felt a sense of quiet resolve settle over me. The silence of the house seemed different today, less comforting and more suffocating. It was as if the walls were closing in on me, whispering their own version of the truth that I had been avoiding for too long. I had thought about it all night. I had replayed every conversation, every small sign that had slipped past me unnoticed. And the more I thought about it, the clearer everything became. It wasn't just the money. It wasn't just the lies. It was the fact that I had trusted Kevin, and in doing so, I had overlooked the truth that had been staring me in the face. Amanda had told me the truth, but it wasn't enough. I still needed to hear it from Kevin. I needed to hear him say the words out loud, to acknowledge the depth of his betrayal. Because only then could I decide what came next. I had always prided myself on being strong, on being able to handle anything that came my way. But this was different. This wasn't something I could simply fix with a phone call or a conversation. This wasn't something I could ignore and hope it would go away. It had been months, maybe even longer, and I had been blind to it all. I had been so focused on keeping my family together, so focused on making sure everything looked perfect, that I had missed the cracks forming beneath the surface. I had missed the lies, the whispers, the subtle shifts in Kevin's behavior. As I stood in front of the mirror, I barely recognized the woman staring back at me. Who was she? The woman who had trusted blindly, who had put her faith in people who did not deserve it. The woman who had kept quiet for so long, afraid to ask the difficult questions. I wasn't sure anymore, but I did know one thing. I could not go on like this. I could not continue living in this shadow of doubt and betrayal. I had to face Kevin, and I had to hear the truth from him, no matter how much it hurt. I dressed quickly, my movements automatic. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't even scared. I was just determined. Determined to finally understand what had happened. Determined to face the reality that I had been avoiding for far too long. Amanda was still in bed when I left the house. I didn't want to wake her. This wasn't something she needed to witness. Not yet. I would handle this on my own. I would speak to Kevin alone, and then I would decide what to do next. The drive to the restaurant was long and quiet. The streets were just beginning to come alive, the early morning light casting a soft glow over everything. I couldn't help but think about how everything had once seemed so perfect. Kevin had been a part of my life for so long, a part of our family. And now, everything was changing. I parked in front of the restaurant, the familiar sign still hanging above the door. It looked just the way it always had, bright, inviting, full of life. But I knew better now. I knew that the restaurant, the business, the life Kevin had built, it was all built on secrets. And those secrets were starting to unravel. I took a deep breath before stepping out of the car. My hands were steady, my heart beating quietly in my chest. I was ready. I had to be. I walked into the restaurant, the smell of fresh coffee and pastries filling the air. It felt like any other morning, but it wasn't. I wasn't the same woman I had been when I had walked in here before. Kevin was behind the counter, his back to me as he arranged some plates. He looked up when he heard the bell above the door ring, his face breaking into a smile as he saw me. "Hey there," he said, his voice warm and familiar. "I wasn't expecting you. What's going on?" I didn't smile back. I couldn't. I had no room for pretense anymore. "I need to talk to you, Kevin," I said, my voice steady but firm. His smile faltered, and he set the plates down, wiping his hands on his apron. "Of course. What's on your mind?" I took a step closer, my gaze locked on his. "I know about the money. I know about the lies. I know about everything you've been hiding from me." His face went pale, his eyes wide with surprise. For a moment, he said nothing. And in that moment, I saw it. The fear in his eyes. The fear that came from knowing that the truth was no longer something he could control. "You know?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," I replied, my voice steady but cutting through the air like a blade. "I know. I know everything. And I need to hear it from you. I need you to tell me what you have been hiding, why you have been lying to me, and why you thought I would never find out." He swallowed hard, his hands trembling slightly as he wiped his forehead with the back of his hand. I could see him searching for the right words, but there were no words that could undo the damage, no words that could take back the lies. I never meant for it to get this far," he said slowly, his voice shaking. "I didn't want you to know. I didn't want to disappoint you. I thought if I could just fix it myself, if I could just keep it under control, you would never have to know." I looked at him, my heart heavy with a mixture of anger and sadness. "You never thought to trust me, did you? You never thought I deserved to know the truth. All this time, I have been kept in the dark, and for what? To protect you? To protect your reputation? What about me, Kevin? What about my trust in you?" His eyes dropped to the floor, unable to meet mine. "I am sorry," he whispered, his voice thick with guilt. "I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted to destroy everything we had. But I was scared. I was scared of losing everything." I could hear the desperation in his voice, but it didn't change what had happened. The lies, the secrets, they had already done their damage. I took a deep breath, my mind clear now. "I don't know what is going to happen next, Kevin, but I do know one thing. I will not be a part of this anymore. Not unless the truth is fully out. Not unless we can start again. with honesty. His shoulders slumped, the weight of his guilt pressing down on him. "I understand," he said quietly. I turned to leave, my steps slow but purposeful. I had heard the truth. And now, I could finally begin to understand everything that had been hidden from me. I stood at the door for a long moment, my hand on the handle, the weight of Kevin's words still lingering in the air behind me. I had come here for answers, and I had gotten them. But the truth, as painful as it was, had not brought me any relief. It had not fixed anything. It had only exposed more of the fractures I had ignored for so long. As I stepped out of the restaurant, I felt the cool morning air rush against my face, sharp and refreshing, like a sudden burst of clarity. It was as if the world outside had not been affected by the storm inside me. The birds were still singing, the sun was still rising, and life was moving forward, oblivious to the upheaval I had just faced. But I was different now. I could feel the shift within me. I had walked into that restaurant with uncertainty and fear, and I was walking away with something else entirely. A quiet strength, a newfound resolve. I had expected to feel anger. I had expected to storm out, furious at Kevin for betraying me. But instead I felt a strange sense of peace. It wasn't a peace that came from forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a peace that came from knowing that I had faced the truth, from knowing that I had taken control of my own story. I had walked into that room searching for answers. Now, I was walking away with more than just answers. I was walking away with the beginning of my own healing. I had spent so many years focusing on everyone else's needs, on keeping the family together, on making sure everything appeared perfect. I had ignored my own emotions, my own pain, in the name of love and loyalty. But now I could see it clearly. I had allowed myself to become small in the presence of others. I had allowed their lies, their secrets, their fears to overshadow my own worth. But not anymore. I was not just a bystander in my own life. I had always been the one holding everything together, the one who kept the peace, the one who cared for everyone else. But now, I was choosing to care for myself. I was choosing to walk away from the things that no longer served me, from the lies that had kept me bound, from the relationships that had drained me. As I walked down the street, my steps slow and deliberate, I felt something shift inside me. It was as though a weight had been lifted from my shoulders, even though the truth was still raw and painful. It was the weight of knowing that I had done all I could. I had confronted Kevin. I had demanded the truth. And now, it was time for me to move forward, to heal. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know if Kevin and I could ever go back to the way things were, or if our relationship was forever changed. But I knew one thing for sure. I could no longer live in the shadows of the past. I could no longer let fear and doubt control my every decision. The walk back to my car felt different. The air was still crisp, but now I could breathe it in deeply. It was a strange feeling, this sense of release. I had been carrying the weight of secrets for so long, and now I was walking away from them. I was walking away from the silence that had haunted me. I was walking away from the idea that I needed anyone else's approval to be whole. I did not know how the future would unfold. I did not know if I could ever trust Kevin again, or if I would even want to. But for the first time in a long time, I was okay with that uncertainty, because I knew that I had the power to shape my own path. I reached my car and paused before opening the door. I looked around at the world, the same world that had seemed so distant, so unfeeling just hours ago. And now, it felt different. It felt like a place full of possibilities, a place where I could rebuild my life, piece by piece. I was no longer just a woman who had been hurt, a woman who had been betrayed. I was a woman who had stood up for herself, who had faced the truth, and who had walked away from the past to embrace whatever lay ahead. I got into the car, started the engine, and drove away. I did not know where I was going, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally headed in the right direction. The days after I walked away from Kevin were strangely quiet. The world outside seemed to continue without interruption, as though nothing had changed. People went about their routines, the sun rose and set, the birds sang. But inside, I was different. The weight of everything I had learned, everything I had faced, seemed to linger in the corners of my mind, heavy and undeniable. I had thought that once the truth was out, once I confronted Kevin, I would feel some sense of relief, a sense of finality, but that was not what happened. Instead, I felt a quiet ache that refused to go away. The truth had been exposed, yes, but the pain, the hurt, the disappointment stayed with me. It was like a shadow that I could not escape, no matter how much I tried to move forward. I would find myself in the middle of a task, a simple, mundane chore, and then it would hit me. A wave of sadness, of regret. It would be the smallest thing. A smell, a memory, a song on the radio. And I would feel it, like a sudden punch to the gut. I would be reminded of how deeply I had been hurt. I would remember the look on Kevin's face when I had confronted him, the way he had tried to explain himself. And I would feel the ache again. It was not the anger that lingered. No, that had been brief. I had been angry, yes. But what stayed was the sadness, the feeling of betrayal. The fact that someone I had trusted so completely, someone who had been a part of my family for so long, had lied to me. Not just once, but repeatedly. And for what? To protect his own interests? To keep his secret life hidden? I would lay in bed at night, my mind racing with questions. Why had he done it? Why had he thought he could keep the truth from me forever? Why had I allowed myself to believe in the version of him that he had created? The one that fit neatly into the life I had imagined? The pain was not just in the betrayal itself. It was in the realization that I had not seen it coming, that I had let myself trust someone who had never earned it, that I had ignored the signs, thinking that love and loyalty could overcome everything. But now, I had no choice but to face it, to feel it. The silence of the house was oppressive, as though it too was mourning the loss of something. I had spent so many years building a life that I thought was secure, a life that I thought was filled with honesty and love. But now I knew that the foundation had been cracked, and no amount of pretending could hide that truth. I tried to keep myself busy. I went for walks. I cooked meals for Amanda. I cleaned and organized. But no matter what I did, the pain was always there, lurking just beneath the surface. It would come when I least expected it, like a wave crashing over me, pulling me under. I could not talk to Amanda about it. Not yet. I was still processing everything, still figuring out how to move forward. I knew she had been hurt by Kevin's lies too, but I could not bear to add to her pain. I did not want to make her feel as though she had to choose sides, and so I kept it all inside. I smiled when I needed to, I laughed when I could, but the pain remained, a constant companion. It was not the kind of pain that could be fixed with time or words. It was the kind of pain that only came from a deep betrayal, from someone you loved and trusted more than anyone else. There were moments when I would feel a brief sense of hope, when I would remind myself that this too would pass, that I would heal. But then the next moment would come, and the ache would return, reminding me that healing was not a straight line. It was messy and unpredictable, just like the emotions I was feeling. I would stare out of the window, watching the world move on, while I stood still, caught in the grip of something I could not shake. The pain was there, always present, always waiting for the right moment to remind me of what I had lost. It would be easy to believe that time would heal all wounds, that things would get better with each passing day. But deep down, I knew it would take more than time. It would take strength. It would take courage. And most of all, it would take the willingness to face the pain and learn to live with it. Because sometimes the pain does not go away. Sometimes it stays with you, and you have no choice but to learn to live alongside it. The evenings were the hardest. It was when the world outside seemed to slow down, when the hum of daily life softened, that I found myself lost in memories of what once was. There were no distractions, no tasks to keep my hands busy, no conversations to fill the silence. It was just me, sitting with my thoughts and the weight of everything that had changed. I missed the way things used to be before all of this, before the lies, before the betrayals, before the pain. There was a time when I could look at Kevin and see someone I loved, someone I trusted. I missed the days when our family dinners felt warm and welcoming, when the laughter flowed easily and the future seemed so certain. I missed the simplicity of those moments, the ease of knowing where we stood with each other. It was hard to accept that those days were gone. It was even harder to accept that I might never have them again. The innocence of it all, the belief that love could solve everything, that honesty was something we all shared. It felt so far away now. I thought about the early days of my marriage to Robert, how we had started out so full of hope, so full of dreams. We had been young, eager to build a life together, believing that nothing could stand in our way. And for a while, it felt like we had it all. The house, the children, the future. Everything seemed perfect. But now, all those memories seemed to have a bittersweet tint to them. They were reminders of a time when I had believed in the simplicity of love, in the power of trust. I wondered if that innocence had been lost forever, or if it was simply buried beneath the weight of the years that had passed. I missed the closeness I had once shared with Amanda, before the strain of adulthood and her own family responsibilities had created distance between us. I missed the way we could talk for hours, sharing our hopes, our fears, our secrets. Now, it felt like there was a barrier between us, an invisible wall that I did not know how to break down. She was busy with her own life, and I did not want to burden her with my pain. I even missed the way things had been with Kevin, strange as that might seem now. There was a time when I had believed in him wholeheartedly, when he had been a part of our family, not just in name, but in spirit. He had been someone I could talk to, someone I could count on. And now, it felt as though that person had disappeared, replaced by someone I no longer recognized. The pain of missing those moments, those people, was not just about the loss itself. It was about the realization that nothing would ever be the same again. It was about knowing that I could not go back. No matter how much I wanted to, I often found myself sitting in the quiet of the house, staring at old photographs, remembering the days when everything seemed so simple, so full of promise. I would trace the outlines of my family in the photos, their smiles frozen in time. I would think about how we had all come together, how we had built something, and how it had all come undone. Sometimes I would imagine what it would have been like if things had turned out differently. If Kevin had been honest with me from the beginning, if he had never betrayed our trust, if I had seen the signs sooner, would we still be the same family? Would things be different? But those thoughts only made the ache grow deeper. The truth was that I could not change the past. I could not undo the mistakes that had been made, nor could I erase the pain that had been caused. All I had now was the present, and even that felt uncertain. I knew that I could not keep living in the past. I could not keep mourning what had been lost. But it was hard. It was so hard to let go of those memories, to accept that the past was gone. The truth was, I missed the feeling of belonging. I missed the sense of being a part of something bigger than myself. But in the silence of the evenings, I had to face the reality that sometimes we are left to rebuild our lives on our own. We are left to pick up the pieces and start again, even when the pieces do not fit together as they once did. As much as I missed the past, I knew I could not stay there. The past could not be changed, no matter how much I longed for it. And so, I let the memories fade, little by little, trying to make space for the future, even if I did not know what that future would look like. It had been a few days since I last spoke to Amanda, and the silence between us had started to weigh on me. I missed her, but I did not know how to approach the subject of what had happened with Kevin. It felt like too much to ask, too much to lay at her feet. She had her own life, her own struggles, and I did not want to add to them. But I could not carry this burden alone any longer. I needed someone to talk to, someone who would listen without judgment, someone who would understand the depth of what I was feeling. That was when I decided to call Laura. Laura had been my friend for years, and she had seen me through all the ups and downs of life. We had laughed together, cried together, and supported each other in ways that only old friends could. We had shared our most intimate fears and dreams, and I knew that she would not shy away from my pain. I dialed her number and waited, my heart beating a little faster than usual. I had not reached out to her in a while. Life had been busy, and I had let the distance grow between us. But now, I needed her. I needed to hear her voice, to feel that connection again. When she answered, her voice was warm and familiar. Just the comfort I needed. "Margaret, it is so good to hear from you. How have you been?" Laura asked, her tone genuine. But there was an undercurrent of concern that I could not ignore. "I have been better," I said softly, my throat tightening. It was hard to say the words out loud, harder than I had anticipated. I am going through something I don't really know how to handle." "Tell me," Laura said. "I am here for you. Whatever it is, you can talk to me." And that was all it took. The floodgates opened, and I found myself telling Laura everything. About Kevin's betrayal, about the lies he had told, about the way I had felt when I discovered the truth. I spoke in a rush, my words tumbling over each other, as though I needed to get them all out at once before I lost the courage. As I spoke, I could hear Laura's steady, comforting presence on the other end of the line. She did not interrupt. She did not try to fix anything. She just listened, offering quiet words of encouragement when needed. When I finally finished, there was a long silence. I could feel Laura processing everything I had shared, her thoughts swirling just as mine had. "I am so sorry, Margaret," she said finally, her voice full of empathy. "You have been through so much. I cannot imagine how painful this must be for you. But I want you to know something. You are not alone. You do not have to carry this by yourself." "I know," I whispered. "It is just hard. It is hard to let go of the person I thought Kevin was, to accept that he is not who I believed him to be." "That is the hardest part," Laura agreed. "It is not just the betrayal. It is the loss of the person you thought you knew. The hardest part is realizing that you cannot unsee the truth. You cannot go back to the way things were, no matter how much you want to." "I keep thinking about how things used to be," I said, the words escaping before I could stop them. "How simple everything felt. How easy it was to believe in the goodness of people. Now, it all feels so broken." "Of course you miss those days," Laura said softly. "That is only natural. But remember this, Margaret. The woman you are today is stronger, wiser, and more resilient than you were before. You have been through so much, and you are still standing. That is something worth celebrating." Her words hung in the air, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a small spark of hope. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was stronger than I thought. Maybe, just maybe, I could rebuild from this. "I do not know where to go from here," I admitted. "I do not know how to move forward, especially with Kevin." "I think the most important thing right now is to take care of yourself, Margaret," Laura said gently. "You do not have to have all the answers right now. You just need to take one step at a time. And remember, you do not have to face this alone. I am here. I always will be." Her words were like a balm to my soul. I had been so focused on the pain, on the betrayal, on the loss, that I had forgotten the most important thing, that I was not alone. I had friends. I had people who cared about me, and I could lean on them when I needed to. "I am so grateful for you, Laura," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for being here. I will always be here for you, Margaret. Always." As we said our goodbyes, I felt a sense of peace that I had not felt in days. I did not have all the answers. I did not know what the future would hold. But I knew that I had people who cared about me, and that made all the difference. Saying goodbye is never easy. It does not matter how many times you tell yourself it is for the best, how many times you try to prepare your heart for what is coming. The truth is, the moment you speak those words, whether softly or with force, something inside of you shifts. It is the finality that hurts. The weight of knowing that something you once held dear, something you once trusted, is no longer part of your life. I never imagined that I would be saying goodbye to Kevin. Not like this. Not after everything we had been through together. Everything we had shared as family. But sometimes, life forces us to make decisions we never thought we would have to make. And so, the time had come for me to step away, to let go, and to reclaim the life I had almost forgotten I could live. It had taken me days, maybe weeks, to gather the courage to confront him. Every time I thought I was ready, doubt crept in. I thought about the years we had known each other, the holidays spent together, the birthdays, the shared moments of joy. But then I thought about the betrayal, the lies, the deceit, and I realized that in order to protect myself, I needed to let go. It was a quiet afternoon when I called him. The house was still, the sound of birds chirping faint in the distance. I had decided that this conversation would be my goodbye. I would not let him manipulate me any longer, would not let him make me feel small or insignificant. I was done, being the silent victim in a relationship that had long since stopped serving me. When Kevin answered, there was a coolness to his voice that I had not expected. I had hoped for some sign of regret, some glimpse of the man I had once known, but it was not there, not in the tone, not in the words. "Margaret," he said, as if we were still just having another ordinary conversation. "What is it?" His casual approach stung. He was not even attempting to acknowledge the hurt, the betrayal. And it was in that moment that I knew for certain I could not stay. "Kevin," I began, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "I think it is time for us to part ways. I need to step away from this relationship. From you." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could almost hear him processing my words, trying to make sense of them, trying to figure out what kind of reaction would keep me around. But I was done. I was no longer interested in his manipulations. I had made my decision, and nothing he said could change that. "Margaret, wait," he finally said, a touch of panic creeping into his voice. "We do not have to do this. We can fix this. We can talk about it." I could feel the pressure in my chest, the temptation to go back to the familiar, to let him convince me that things could be better. But I stood firm. "No, Kevin," I said, my voice clear and resolute. "There is nothing left to fix. I cannot continue to be a part of this. It is over." There was another pause, and I could feel the shift in the atmosphere. It was as if the space between us had grown wider, as if the distance that had been there all along had finally become impossible to ignore. "I see," he said, his voice cold now. "So that is it then. You are done?" "Yes," I answered, quietly. "I am done." We said a few more words after that, but they were hollow, meaningless. The conversation ended as abruptly as it had begun, and I was left holding the phone in my hand, staring at it as if it were a foreign object. The silence that followed was heavy, oppressive. I had just let go of something I had held for so long, and though I knew it was the right decision, a part of me could not help but mourn. I had to remind myself that this was not failure. This was survival. This was strength. But in that moment, as the weight of the decision settled into my bones, I did not feel strong. I did not feel empowered. I just felt empty. I sat in the quiet for a long time, trying to catch my breath, trying to find my bearings again. It was one thing to make a decision, but it was another thing entirely to live with it. The thing about saying goodbye is that it forces you to face the truth of your feelings, the truth of what you have lost, and the truth of who you are without it. Saying goodbye is hard because it means acknowledging that something you once thought was permanent is now gone. But it also means accepting that you are capable of moving on, of creating a new chapter for yourself. It means that you are not defined by the past. As I sat there, reflecting on everything that had happened, I realized something. The pain I was feeling was not just from losing Kevin. It was from losing the version of myself that had allowed him to hurt me for so long. I was grieving the woman I had been before I learned my own worth, before I understood the importance of setting boundaries, of protecting my heart. But I also knew that this was the beginning of something else. I was not who I had been yesterday. I was stronger, wiser, more aware of what I needed. I was ready to move forward, even if it meant doing so without Kevin in my life. I took a deep breath and stood up. I had said goodbye. Now, I had to keep walking forward. Alone. The word echoed in my mind, a constant reminder of the choice I had made. I had said goodbye to Kevin, and with that goodbye, I had also let go of a part of myself, a part I had once thought was inseparable from my life. It felt strange, like standing in an empty room, the silence so thick it almost had weight. I had spent so many years with someone who had become my world, or so I had believed. Even when things were difficult, even when I had known there were cracks, I convinced myself that we were meant to be together, that we could make it work. But now, in the quiet that surrounded me, I realized how much I had been willing to ignore in order to keep things intact. I had been so desperate to hold on to something, anything, that I had not stopped to ask myself if I was still part of it, if it was still right for me. Now, here I was, alone. It should have felt like freedom, like a weight lifting off my shoulders. But instead, it felt like an overwhelming emptiness. I had always been someone who prided herself on her independence, but now that independence felt like a burden. There were moments when I wished someone would come knocking at my door, just to fill the silence. I wished for someone to take away the sting of loneliness, if only for a moment. It was not that I regretted my decision. I did not. But it was still hard. Letting go of the life I thought I would have, the life I had envisioned with Kevin, was not an easy thing. I had built so much of my identity around that relationship, around the family I thought we were creating together. And now, with all of that gone, I felt like I was standing at the edge of a vast unknown. I spent the next few days in a haze. I went through the motions, cooking, cleaning, trying to keep my mind occupied. But there was a heaviness that seemed to linger in the air, a constant reminder that something had shifted, something had changed. I had once defined myself by my relationships, by the people I kept close, by the love I had to give. But now, with that love no longer being returned, I had to face the reality that I was alone. I tried not to think too much about it. I told myself that I would be okay, that I had been through worse, that I had survived things before. But the truth was, I did not feel okay. I did not feel like I had survived anything. I felt like I was standing still, waiting for something to change, waiting for some sign that this decision was the right one. It was during one of these quiet afternoons that I received a phone call from Amanda. Her voice was a welcome distraction, a small comfort amidst the silence that had taken over my life. "Margaret, I was just thinking about you," she said. "How are you holding up?" I hesitated before answering. The truth was, I was not holding up well, but I did not want to burden Amanda with my pain. She had her own life, her own challenges, and I had always been the one to offer support. I did not want to turn the tables, to admit that I was struggling. "I am doing okay," I said, keeping my voice steady. "It has been a quiet few days, just adjusting, you know." Amanda did not buy it. I can hear it in your voice, Margaret. I know you better than that. What is really going on?" And just like that, the floodgates opened again. I found myself telling Amanda everything. The loneliness, the uncertainty, the emotional weight of the decision I had made. I told her about the quiet house, the silence that felt suffocating. I told her about how I felt lost in my own life, how I was trying to figure out who I was without Kevin by my side. "Margaret," Amanda said gently after I finished, "you are going to be okay. You have always been stronger than you give yourself credit for. I know it does not feel that way right now, but you will get through this. You are not truly alone. You have me. You have people who care about you." Her words were a balm to my soul. She was right, of course. I was not truly alone. I had friends, a support system, but the emotional pain of letting go was still real. It was still heavy, still overwhelming. "Thank you," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I needed to hear that. "You do not need to go through this alone," Amanda continued. "You have people who love you, who will help you pick up the pieces." I took a deep breath. It was hard to imagine that I could ever feel whole again, but Amanda's words gave me a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, I could find my way through this darkness. "I am trying," I said softly. "I really am." "I know you are," Amanda said, with a comforting warmth in her voice, "and I will be right here, every step of the way." As I hung up the phone, I sat in the quiet for a while longer. The loneliness was still there, but somehow, it did not feel as suffocating as it had before. Maybe it was because I had opened up, let someone in, even just for a moment. Maybe it was because I had heard, once again, that I was not truly alone in this world. I was still finding my way, still figuring out who I was without the person I thought I would be with forever. But for the first time in a long while, I believed that I could do it, that I could learn to live on my own terms. There are moments in life when everything changes, but you do not realize how much until you look back. You think you are simply going through the motions, trying to survive, trying to keep your head above water. But then, one day, you wake up and see it, the transformation. You see that you have changed in ways both big and small, and that the person you were before can never return. I had always believed that I knew who I was. I thought I had a firm grip on my identity. I was Margaret, a mother, a wife, a friend. I had defined myself by the roles I played in the lives of others. But in the aftermath of everything that had happened, I began to realize that I had never truly known myself. I had built my life around others, around their needs, their expectations, and in doing so, I had lost sight of who I was, what I wanted, and what I needed. But now, I was starting to see it. I was starting to understand that I had been living for others for so long that I had forgotten how to live for myself. I had allowed myself to be shaped by the opinions and judgments of others, by the roles I was expected to play, and I had lost my sense of self in the process. I could feel the change within me, a quiet but powerful shift. It was not instant, not like flipping a switch, but over time, I began to notice it. I began to see that I was no longer the same woman I had been before. The woman who tolerated disrespect. The woman who put others' needs before her own. The woman who stayed in relationships because she feared being alone. That woman was gone, and in her place stood someone different, someone stronger, someone more aware of her worth. I could feel the power in that, the strength in knowing that I had survived everything life had thrown at me and had come out the other side, not broken, but whole. I had been hurt, yes, but I had learned to heal. I had been betrayed, but I had learned to trust myself again. I had learned that I was not defined by the roles others wanted me to play. I was not defined by the people I had loved, by the relationships that had shaped me. I was defined by the choices I made, by the strength I carried within myself, and by the woman I was becoming. It was a strange feeling, both liberating and unsettling. I was proud of the person I was becoming, but at the same time, I missed the comfort of the old me, the woman who did not question everything, the woman who followed the rules, who played her part. But that woman had never been free. She had never been able to fully embrace who she was because she was too busy living up to other people's expectations. Now, I was free. I no longer cared about fitting into someone else's mold. I no longer cared about being the person others wanted me to be. I cared about being the person I was meant to be. And that, in itself, was a revelation. But there was still a part of me that held on to the past, the old habits, the old fears. They did not disappear overnight. The temptation to go back to what was familiar, to the life I had known, was strong. But every time I thought about it, I remembered the pain, the betrayal, the sense of losing myself, and I knew that I could not go back. I had to keep moving forward, even if it meant walking alone, even if it meant facing the unknown, the uncertainty. I had to keep moving, because I knew that I was no longer the woman I had been. I was stronger. Now, I was wiser, and I was ready to embrace whatever came next. As I looked in the mirror one evening, I saw it, the change. I saw the woman staring back at me, and I realized that she was not the same woman who had made excuses, who had stayed in unhealthy relationships, who had allowed herself to be taken for granted. She was someone different, someone who had learned to stand on her own 2 feet, someone who had learned to trust herself, someone who had learned to say no and mean it. It was not always easy, and there were days when I doubted myself, when I questioned whether I had made the right choices. But then I remembered the truth. I was not the same. And that was the most important thing. I was becoming the woman I had always been meant to be. Strong, independent, and unapologetically myself. Sometimes, when the world feels dark and heavy, it is easy to forget that there is still light, however small it may seem. We become so absorbed in the weight of our struggles, in the overwhelming nature of our pain, that we forget to look for the flickers of hope that exist around us. But they are there, if we choose to see them. For me, that small light came in the form of a quiet moment, a fleeting but significant pause in the chaos of my emotions. It happened one afternoon when I was sitting by the window, staring out at the garden. The sky was overcast, and there was a chill in the air. But for some reason, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The garden, which had always been a place of refuge for me, seemed to breathe life into my weary heart. The flowers were beginning to bloom again, small splashes of color in the sea of green. The birds were chirping, flitting from branch to branch, and there was a soft rustle of the wind through the leaves. It was so simple, so natural, but in that moment it felt like everything was falling into place. I could not explain it, but I felt something shift within me, a small light. It was not much, just a glimmer, but it was enough to remind me that there was still beauty in the world, still goodness. Despite everything that had happened, despite the pain and the heartache, there were moments that still held meaning, moments that still held hope. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath, letting the calm wash over me. For the first time in weeks, I felt my shoulders relax. The tightness in my chest began to loosen. I was no longer overwhelmed by the noise of my thoughts, by the constant questioning and self-doubt. I could hear the birds, the wind, the distant sound of a car passing by. But there was a stillness in me, a peace that I had not felt in a long time. And then, for the first time in a while, I smiled. It was a small smile, but it was real. It was the kind of smile that comes from deep within, not forced or out of obligation, but because something inside you shifts, just enough to let in a little light. I realized that I had been so focused on the things that had gone wrong in my life that I had forgotten to acknowledge the good. I had been so caught up in the heartbreak and the loss that I had overlooked the small blessings, the quiet moments of joy that still existed. This was not to say that everything was suddenly perfect. I was still dealing with the aftermath of my decisions, still navigating the path I had chosen. But for the first time, I could see the possibility of a future that was not defined by my past. I could see the potential for happiness, for growth, for healing. I had spent so much time mourning the loss of what I thought my life would be, that I had neglected to notice what was right in front of me. The potential for something new, something better. Something that could not be built on the past, but could only grow from the seeds I planted in the present. I thought about all the small things that had given me comfort in recent days. The kindness of a friend's words, the quiet of my home, the peaceful moments in nature. These were not grand gestures, not life-changing events, but they were pieces of light in my life. Each one was a small flicker, a reminder that no matter how dark the world seemed, there was always something worth holding on to. It was then that I understood. The light I was looking for was not going to come from outside. It was not going to be some grand revelation or sudden miracle. It was already inside me, in the way I chose to see the world, in the way I chose to move forward. The light was in my own heart, in my own resilience, in my ability to heal and grow. It was in the small moments of peace, the quiet victories, the days when I allowed myself to just be, without judgment or expectation. I was still learning to embrace the light, to allow it to guide me instead of the darkness of my past. But that small smile, that tiny spark of hope, reminded me that I was not alone. I was not lost. And as long as I kept looking for the small lights, I would always find my way. There are moments in life when we are forced to start over, even when we do not want to. We can try to hold on to the past, try to keep things the way they were, but eventually we realize that we have no choice but to move forward. It is not easy. It is not simple, but it is necessary. I had reached that point, the point where I could no longer keep living the life I had known. It was not because I wanted to forget the past, but because the past was holding me back from becoming the woman I was meant to be. I had to let go of the old patterns, the old habits, the old ways of thinking. I had to begin again. It started with the smallest of steps, a new routine, a simple choice to focus on myself for the first time in years. I began waking up earlier in the mornings, taking a walk around the neighborhood before the world came alive. The fresh air, the quiet of the morning, it all gave me a sense of peace. It was like a reset button for my mind, a gentle reminder that I was still alive, still moving forward. I also started to care for myself in ways I had not before. I made time for things I enjoyed, things that brought me joy without any sense of obligation. I began reading books that inspired me, not just the practical ones I had read to please others. I tried new recipes, even though I had no one to cook for but myself. I allowed myself to be a little selfish, a little indulgent. At first, it felt strange. It felt like I was doing something wrong, like I should be focusing on others, not on myself. But over time, I realized that it was okay to be kind to myself. It was okay to prioritize my own happiness. It was okay to enjoy the simple things. Without guilt, it was also in these moments that I began to see the changes in me more clearly. I was no longer living for anyone else. I was no longer staying in relationships or situations because I thought it was expected of me. I was beginning to live for myself. It was liberating, and yet it was scary. Starting over meant I had to face the unknown. I had to trust that the choices I was making now were the right ones, even if they did not always make sense. I had to let go of the need for approval, the need for validation from others. I had to trust that I was enough, just as I was, and that in itself was the hardest part. For so long, I had defined myself by my relationships, by the roles I played in others' lives. I had forgotten that my worth was not based on how others saw me. My worth was in who I was, in what I believed, in the choices I made. I started to realize that I was more than just a mother, more than just a wife, more than just a daughter. I was Margaret, a woman with dreams, with desires, with a future. And that future was in my hands, not in anyone else's. I began to dream again. It had been so long since I allowed myself to dream, to think about what I wanted, not just what others needed. I thought about traveling, about seeing the world in a way I had never done before. I thought about starting something new, something just for me. It was frightening to think about these things, to consider the possibility of a life I had not planned for. But it was also exciting. For the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of possibility. As I took these small steps toward a new life, I realized that I was beginning again in more ways than one. It was not just about changing my routine or trying new things. It was about changing my mindset, changing the way I saw myself and my future. I was no longer a woman defined by the past. I was a woman with a future I could shape for myself. And that, more than anything else, gave me hope. I was beginning again, and this time I was doing it on my own terms. It is a strange thing, the way people come in and out of your life. Sometimes, it feels like they are there for a reason, to teach you something, or to help you grow. Other times, it feels like they were never meant to be in your story, and yet, they stay longer than they should. But no matter the reason, there are always moments when people try to come back, to re-enter your life after they have been gone. They sense the distance, feel the space that has opened up, and they think they can return as if nothing has changed. It is tempting to let them in, to return to the comfort of what you once knew. But what I had learned was that letting someone back in meant more than just opening the door. It meant allowing them to change your life again, to shape your future, for better or worse. It was Dresden who came back to me first. After everything that had happened, after the tension between us had finally reached its breaking point. I had expected him to stay away. I had expected that he would let the silence between us grow thicker, that he would carry on with his life and forget about me, but he did not. Instead, he tried to reach out. It started with a message, short and simple. "Mom, can we talk?" I stared at the words on my phone, my fingers hovering over the screen. My heart raced in my chest. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to pretend I had not seen it, to keep the distance between us. But another part of me wanted to respond, to hear his voice again, to understand why he had done the things he did. I had spent so much time wondering what went wrong, why he treated me the way he did, and now here he was, offering an opening, a chance to understand, maybe even to heal. But the question I had to ask myself was, could I trust him again? Could I allow him back into my life after everything that had happened? I sat down on the couch, holding the phone in my hands, feeling the weight of the decision. Part of me wanted to scream, to tell him how hurt I was, how much he had betrayed me. I wanted to make him understand the depth of my pain, the years of putting him first, of giving everything I had, only to be ignored and dismissed. But another part of me, the part that still loved him, that still wanted to believe in him, wanted to give him a chance. I wanted to believe that he could change, that he could finally see me for who I truly was, not just the mother who had always been there for him, but the woman I had become. I sent a reply, cautious and measured. "What do you want to talk about?" His response came quickly. "I am sorry, Mom. I have been thinking a lot about everything. I realize I hurt you, and I want to make it right." The words seemed genuine, but I had learned to be careful with words. Words were easy to say, but actions spoke louder. I had seen the way he treated me before, the way he took me for granted, the way he never truly saw me. Could I trust that he had changed? Could I trust that he was offering me something more than just empty apologies? I did not know. I could not know. But I also knew that I could not keep living in the past, frozen in the pain of betrayal. I could not keep waiting for him to understand or change. I had spent too much time on that already. So, I made a decision. I would meet with him, but on my terms. I would hear him out, but I would not allow him to rewrite the past. I would not let him diminish my worth or make me feel like I was less than I was. This time I would stand my ground. When we met, it was awkward at first. There were no warm embraces, no easy words. There was just the quiet tension, the heavy air between us, but as we talked, I could see the sincerity in his eyes, the regret in his voice. He was not the same person who had turned his back on me before. There was something different about him, something real. And maybe, just maybe, he was ready to rebuild the relationship we had lost. But as I listened, I realized something important. I was not the same woman I had been before either. I had changed. I had learned to value myself, to stand up for my own needs, to demand respect. And I would not let anyone, even my own son, take that away from me. So, I listened, but I did not forget. I forgave, but I did not forget. I would allow him back into my life, but only if he respected the boundaries I had set. Only if he understood that the woman he had once known was no longer the same. It was not easy, and I did not know what the future held. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was in control. I was not letting him back into my life out of fear or desperation. I was letting him back because I believed in the possibility of healing, in the possibility of rebuilding, but only if he could meet me where I was now. And that, I realized, was the beginning of something new. There are moments in life when you look at yourself and realize you are not the same person you once were. The changes are subtle at first, almost imperceptible. You might notice a shift in how you respond to situations, a change in the way you think about others or even yourself. But over time, you begin to see it more clearly. You are different. You have become someone new, someone stronger. That was the realization that hit me as I sat across from Dresden, listening to him speak. His apology was heartfelt, his words sincere, but something inside me had changed. It was not just that I had learned to forgive him. It was that I had learned to forgive myself, to accept that I was not defined by my past mistakes, by the choices I had made, or by the ways others had treated me. When I looked at Dresden now, I saw not just my son, but also the man he had become. I could see his regrets, his attempts to make amends, but I also saw something else. I saw that I no longer needed his approval. I no longer needed him to validate my worth. For so long, I had given so much of myself to him, to my family, to everyone around me. But in doing so, I had lost myself. I had forgotten that I was enough on my own, that I did not need anyone's permission to be who I was meant to be. As I listened to him talk about his struggles, his mistakes, I realized that I had my own journey, my own story. I had my own struggles, my own triumphs, and I had not given myself enough credit for them. I had spent so much time caring for others, trying to fix their problems, that I had forgotten about my own healing. I had forgotten that I, too, needed to be seen, needed to be heard, and needed to be loved, not because of what I did for others, but simply because of who I was. When the conversation ended, I felt different. Not because everything had been resolved, not because Dresden had changed, but because I had changed. I had learned that my happiness did not depend on anyone else. It was not about fixing relationships or gaining approval. It was about reclaiming my own voice, my own power. It was about choosing myself, choosing to stand firm in who I was and what I had learned. The old Margaret, the one who had been afraid of confrontation, the one who had allowed others to dictate her worth, was no longer there. She had been replaced by a woman who knew her value, who understood that her story was hers to write. I had learned that my worth was not determined by how others saw me, but by how I saw myself. And that was a lesson that would stay with me forever. I was different now. I had grown, evolved, and become stronger than I had ever thought possible. It was not about being perfect or having all the answers. It was about embracing the journey, trusting myself, and knowing that I was enough, just as I was. And as I walked away from that conversation, I felt a sense of peace. Not because everything had been fixed, but because I had learned to let go of what no longer served me. I had learned to let go of the past and embrace the future, whatever it might hold. I was different now, and that difference was something I could carry with me, no matter where life took me. There comes a point in every journey, a turning point, when you realize that the most important decision you can make is to choose yourself. It sounds simple, almost obvious, but it is not always easy. It is not always clear. Choosing yourself means putting your own needs, your own happiness, and your own peace of mind before the expectations and demands of others. It means standing up for yourself, even when it feels uncomfortable, even when it feels like you are being selfish. But here's the truth: it is not selfish. It is necessary. For too long, I had placed the needs of others before my own. I had given everything, my time, my energy, my love, to everyone around me. I had done it because I believed it was my role, my duty, as a mother, a wife, a daughter. I thought that was what was expected of me. But somewhere along the way, I had lost sight of who I was. Somewhere along the way, I had forgotten that I, too, had dreams, desires, and a life to live. Choosing myself did not mean abandoning the people I loved. It did not mean shutting them out or pushing them away. It meant taking the time to understand my own needs, my own desires, and my own boundaries. It meant giving myself permission to say no when I needed to say yes to things that brought me joy, and to walk away from situations or relationships that drained me. It was a difficult decision. It was not something that came easily to me. But as I sat in my living room, reflecting on everything that had happened, I realized that I had no choice. I could not keep living in the shadows of others' expectations. I could not keep allowing myself to be defined by what other people needed from me. I had to choose myself, for my own sake. So I did. I chose to spend my days doing what made me happy. I chose to take walks without worrying about who needed me to be somewhere. I chose to pick up new hobbies, to explore the things that I had always wanted to do, but never had the time for. I chose to fill my life with things that nourished my soul, rather than things that drained it. I chose to surround myself with people who respected me, who valued me for who I was, not for what I could do for them. And the more I chose myself, the more I realized something profound. When you choose yourself, you do not lose the people you love. You do not push them away. In fact, you create space for the relationships that are truly meaningful. The people who love and respect you will still be there, and the people who do not will fall away, as they should. It was freeing. It was liberating, and it was something I had never fully understood until that moment. I chose myself, and in doing so, I found a strength I did not know I had. I found a sense of peace and clarity that had been missing for so long. I found my voice again. The voice I had silenced for years in order to please others. I found my power, and I found my worth. It was not an easy decision, but it was the right one. And as I moved forward, I knew that I had made the most important choice of my life, because when you choose yourself, everything else falls into place. There is something uniquely beautiful about the way a new day begins. It starts quietly, softly, with the faintest light spilling across the horizon, illuminating the world in shades of pink and gold. It feels like a promise, a fresh start, a chance to leave behind the struggles and the pain of yesterday and begin anew. I had always found comfort in mornings, in the quiet stillness before the world fully woke up. It was during those early hours that I could think clearly, reflect on the things that mattered, and focus on the things I could control. It was during those moments that I found peace, a peace I had not felt in a long time. But this morning, as I sat by the window with my cup of tea, I felt a different kind of peace. It was not just the calm of the early hours. It was the calm of knowing that I was moving forward, that I had taken control of my life in a way I never had before. I had made choices that were hard, but necessary. I had chosen myself, And now, I was free to build the life I wanted. For so long, I had been stuck in a cycle of living for others. My focus had always been on what they needed, on what I could do for them, and on making everyone else happy. But now, for the first time in my life, I was living for me. I was making decisions based on what brought me joy, on what felt right for me. And that, in itself, was a new day, a new beginning. As I sipped my tea, I thought about the road ahead. There was still uncertainty, still challenges that I would face. I knew that not everything would be easy, and there would still be moments of doubt. But there was also hope. Hope that I could continue to grow, continue to learn, and continue to embrace the person I was becoming. I was no longer the woman who had spent her days trying to please everyone else. I was no longer the woman who had put everyone else's needs above her own. I was the woman who had learned to stand tall, to walk with confidence, and to trust in her own strength. The world outside was slowly waking up. The sounds of birds singing and the soft rustle of leaves in the breeze filling the air. It felt like the world was coming alive, just like I was. I was ready for whatever the day would bring. I was ready for the new opportunities, the new challenges, and the new joys that awaited me. I was ready to embrace the future, whatever it held, with open arms. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, I knew that I was not the same person I had been. I had grown, I had changed, and I had learned to trust myself. I had learned that every day was a chance to start again, to move forward, and to create the life I wanted. It was a new day, and I was ready to make it mine. There are moments in life when you realize the true power of gratitude. It is not just about saying thank you for the things you receive, but about appreciating the lessons you have learned, the struggles you have overcome, and the strength you have discovered within yourself. Gratitude, I have learned, is not just about being thankful for the good moments, but also for the challenges that shape us. As I sat quietly in the warmth of my living room, the words began to form in my mind. Slow and steady. I had been through so much in the past few months, and yet, in spite of it all, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. Not because everything had turned out perfectly, but because I had learned to navigate through the storm. I had learned to find my footing when the ground felt uncertain, and most importantly, I had learned to be thankful for the woman I had become along the way. I thought about my family, about Dresden, about the years of misunderstandings and unspoken words, about the pain we had caused each other. I thought about the moments when I had felt invisible, when I had believed I was not enough. But through it all, I had discovered something incredibly powerful. I was enough. I had always been enough. And for that, I was grateful. I also thought about the relationships I had built, the people who had supported me, the friends who had stood by me, and the ones who had helped me find my strength when I could not see it myself. It was through their kindness and encouragement that I had found the courage to walk away from the past and step into the future. But most of all, I was thankful for the gift of self-awareness, the ability to see myself clearly for the first time in years. I had spent so long trying to be everything to everyone else that I had forgotten to be everything to myself. Now I understood that my happiness did not depend on others' opinions, nor on their approval. It was my own to claim, my own to nurture, and my own to protect. I looked out the window, watching the world outside, and felt an overwhelming sense of peace. For so long, I had been afraid of what the future held, but now I realized that the future was mine to shape. I could not control everything, but I could control how I responded to life's challenges. I could choose how I wanted to live, who I wanted to be, and how I wanted to spend my days. And so, with a heart full of gratitude, I said thank you. Thank you for the lessons. Thank you for the growth. Thank you for the second chances. And thank you for the strength to continue moving forward. I was ready for whatever came next, knowing that I had the courage to face it. And most of all, I was ready to live the life I had always dreamed of, a life where I was true to myself, where I honored my worth, and where I never again forgot to be grateful for the journey. Forgiveness is a powerful word, one that we often associate with forgiving others. We think about forgiving those who have hurt us, who have betrayed us, who have let us down. But what about the forgiveness we need to offer ourselves? For years, I held on to the weight of my mistakes, my regrets, my failures. I had been so focused on forgiving others that I never stopped to consider whether I had forgiven myself. I had carried the guilt of past decisions, the shame of missed opportunities, and the burden of things left unsaid. But no matter how much I tried to move forward, those feelings clung to me, like shadows that followed me wherever I went. It was only when I took a step back and really looked at myself that I realized the truth. I had been holding myself prisoner to my own mistakes. I had been punishing myself for things that could never be undone. I had been replaying the past over and over in my mind, wishing I could change this or that. But the reality was that I could not. The past was gone, and the only thing I had power over was the present. I needed to forgive myself. It was not an easy thing to do. It is never easy to let go of the past, especially when we feel like we should have done things differently. But in that quiet moment, as I sat alone with my thoughts, I realized that I had done the best I could with the knowledge and the resources I had at the time. I had made choices that seemed right at the time, but now, looking back, I could see where I had gone wrong. Still, that did not mean I was a failure. It meant that I had learned, grown, and evolved. I forgave myself for the times I had allowed others to walk over me. I forgave myself for the moments when I had been afraid to speak up, to stand up for what I believed in. I forgave myself for the times I had placed the needs of others above my own, for the moments I had neglected my own happiness. I forgave myself for not being perfect, for not having all the answers, for not always knowing the right way forward. And in that forgiveness, I found freedom. Forgiving myself did not mean forgetting the past or excusing the mistakes I had made. It meant accepting that I was human, that I was allowed to make mistakes, and that I was worthy of love and kindness, even from myself. It meant giving myself permission to heal, to move forward, and to create a future where I could be proud of the woman I had become. As I took a deep breath, I felt the weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time in a long time, I felt light. I felt free. I felt like I could breathe again, like I could finally let go of the past and embrace the present with open arms. I had forgiven myself, and in doing so, I had made room for the peace I had been searching for. The journey had not been easy, and it had taken longer than I had hoped. But I had reached a place of acceptance. I was no longer defined by my mistakes or my regrets. I was defined by the person I was becoming. A woman who had learned to trust herself, to love herself, and to forgive herself. And with that forgiveness, I knew that I could face whatever came next with grace and strength. Freedom is a word that carries different meanings for different people. For some, it is the ability to speak without fear, to express their thoughts and feelings without judgment. For others, it is the liberty to go where they want, do what they want, and live without restraint. But for me, freedom was something deeper, something more profound. For the longest time, I had felt trapped by my own fears, trapped by the expectations of others, trapped by the weight of my own insecurities. I had lived in a cage of my own making, one that I did not even realize was there until I began to look closely. I had spent so much of my life trying to please others, trying to meet their expectations, that I had forgotten what it felt like to live for myself. But now, I was free. Free from the fear of judgment. Free from the pressure of being everything to everyone. Free from the guilt and shame that had held me back for so long. I had broken out of the cage I had built around myself, and for the first time in years, I could breathe deeply, fully, without feeling confined by the past. I walked through the world with a lightness I had never known before. It was as if I had been carrying a heavy weight for so long, and now I was free of it. I no longer worried about what others thought of me. I no longer sought validation from anyone. I had learned to validate myself, to trust myself, and to know that I was enough, just as I was. The world around me seemed different now, too. The sky looked bluer, the air felt fresher, and the simple act of walking down the street filled me with a sense of joy I had never experienced before. I was no longer bound by the fear of what might happen or what others might think. I was free to live my life on my own terms, to make choices based on what felt right for me, not what others expected of me. And with that, freedom came a sense of peace, a peace that I had been searching for, without even knowing it, for most of my life. It was the peace of knowing that I had nothing to prove to anyone. It was the peace of knowing that my worth was not defined by the approval of others, but by the love and respect I had for myself. For the first time in a long time, I felt truly alive. I felt connected to the world around me, to the people I loved, and most importantly, to myself. I was no longer living in the shadows of the past. I was no longer weighed down by the mistakes I had made or the regrets I had carried for so long. I was free to create a future that was mine to shape, mine to live. As I stood on the balcony, looking out over the city, I realized just how far I had come. There had been times when I had thought this moment would never come, times when I had doubted my ability to break free. But here I was, standing tall, breathing deeply, and feeling the freedom that had eluded me for so many years. I was free, and with that freedom, I knew that nothing could hold me back anymore. The world was wide open, and I was ready to embrace whatever came next, with courage, with hope, and with a heart full of gratitude. There is a profound clarity that comes with self-acceptance. It is the kind of clarity that cuts through the noise, that helps you see yourself clearly and unapologetically. It is the understanding that, no matter what others may think or say, you know who you are, and that is enough. For so long, I had been searching for this clarity, trying to understand my place in the world. I had spent years living for others, trying to fit into roles that were not truly mine. I had tried to be the perfect mother, the perfect daughter, the perfect wife, and yet, in all of that striving, I had lost sight of who I was. But now, as I stood in front of the mirror, I finally saw the woman looking back at me. She was not perfect, but she was strong. She was not flawless, but she was resilient. She had faced heartbreak, betrayal, and loss, and yet she was still standing. She was the sum of every experience, every mistake, every triumph. She was the woman who had learned to trust herself, to love herself, and to forgive herself. And that was more than enough. I had spent years defining myself through the eyes of others, seeking approval and validation from those around me. But now I understood that true strength comes from within. It comes from knowing who you are, embracing your flaws and imperfections, and recognizing that your worth is not determined by anyone else's opinion. I knew who I was now, and that knowledge brought with it a sense of peace that I had never known before. I no longer felt the need to prove myself to anyone. I no longer sought the approval of others because I had already given it to myself. I had learned to trust my instincts, to honor my values, and to make decisions that aligned with my true self. I was not the woman I had once been, and I was not the woman others had expected me to be. I was the woman who had walked through the fire and emerged stronger, wiser, and more confident in who she was. I had learned that my worth was not defined by the roles I played or the expectations others had of me. My worth was defined by who I was at my core, by the love I had for myself, by the strength I carried within me, and by the courage to live authentically, no matter what. As I looked at myself in the mirror, I smiled. It was not a smile born of pride or arrogance, but of quiet self-assurance. I knew who I was, and for the first time in my life, that was enough. And with that knowledge, I felt an incredible sense of freedom. The freedom to be myself, the freedom to live my life on my own terms, and the freedom to embrace whatever came next with confidence and grace. As I reflect on this journey, I realize that there is one thing I want to share with you, something that has become the most important lesson of all. It is a lesson I have learned through hardship, through struggle, and through growth. And it is this: you are enough. In a world that constantly tells us we need to be more successful, more beautiful, more accomplished, it is easy to forget that we are enough just as we are. I spent so many years chasing perfection, trying to meet others' expectations, believing that if I could just be better, I would finally find happiness. But the truth is, happiness comes from within. It comes from accepting yourself fully, from loving yourself for who you are, and from knowing that you do not need to be anything other than yourself to be worthy. I know how hard it is to let go of the past, to forgive yourself for the mistakes you have made, and to stop seeking approval from others. But trust me when I say this: you are not defined by your past. You are not defined by the things you did or did not do. You are defined by your ability to grow, to learn, and to become the person you are meant to be. There will be times when you feel lost, when you feel like the world is too heavy to bear. There will be times when you question your worth, when you wonder if you are good enough. But in those moments, I want you to remember this: you are enough. You always have been, and you always will be. I have walked a long road to get here, and I know that I still have more to learn. But I can say with confidence that I am at peace with who I am. And I hope that you can find that same peace within yourself. I hope you can learn to trust yourself, to forgive yourself, and to embrace all that you are. This journey is not about perfection. It is about growth, about becoming the best version of yourself, and about accepting yourself along the way. So, wherever you are in your journey, know that you are on the right path. You are enough, just as you are. I wish you all the strength, courage, and love you need to continue your own journey. And remember, you are never alone. We are all in this together, learning, growing, and finding our way. Thank you for taking this journey with me. I hope that in some way, my story has touched your heart and reminded you of your own strength and worth. Now go forward with confidence, knowing that you are enough. You are more than enough.